And we're live.
For whoever the one person is who's out there.
That may be on there right now as we get started. But
it's probably just me watching me.
Yeah,
so
really.
Welcome. This is unusual. We don't normally do this, but we're looking at, we said we're going to change our program. My dog is being weird. It's Sunday. It's noon. Welcome. Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. And we're going to try this going forward, seeing what might ultimately come of it.
I'm not sure that I won't at some point have bagels and lox in front of me while we're doing this.
That's perfectly fine. We could get creative with it as long as more people know that we are consistently doing it on Sundays from now on. But we are going to kick off the new format of Generational Change, which, as you guys know, tomorrow is a very important day. For a very long time, it was celebrated as Columbus Day, which...
And let me be clear, the only reason that was celebrated was that we used to get school off. That was the only thing that was celebrated. I mean, like, there was never any like thought to it other than, oh, we get a day off of school, which they don't even do that anymore.
But as kids who went to school in the 80s and the 90s, the way that Christopher Columbus was portrayed in our textbooks is a lot different than what he actually did.
It was the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria.
And he was just a great guy.
Oh, he was great. And yet we never learned things that were actual real things that we needed to know.
The reality is...
You mean we didn't all sit down with the Native Americans and have a nice Thanksgiving and everybody...
Oh, come on. That's exactly how it was portrayed, you know, because everything is perfect.
Sometimes I can't believe I ever bought that ever, but in all fairness to me, I was like 3.
But I think that that's our job to, you know, inform people as to how things really are. And for a lot of you who know, we have been, as of recent history, even though it should have always been, Indigenous Peoples Day. Did I say?
Yes. Indigenous Peoples Day. And as it should be Indigenous Peoples Day. Well, kind of more days should be Indigenous Peoples Days, but anything but Columbus Day should be, yeah.
And so, as a lot of you know, one of the reasons why Indigenous Peoples Day has become a more mainstream holiday, as it should be the holiday tomorrow. This was brought to our attention in many ways because of what happened starting in 2016 with the Dakota Access Pipeline that was running through Standing Rock. And the most noted individual that most of you would recognize that was at the forefront of activism to stop that pipeline was Chase Iron Eyes. He is from Standing Rock, and he is with us today for the first time, and hopefully not the last time, on Generational
Actually,
Change.
I don't know. I think he's in Niagara Falls right now.
He may be.
I think he is.
We're about to find out. For the first time, you know him, you love him. He is one hell of an activist, attorney, and a fighter for all that is good on this planet. Chase Iron Eyes, welcome to Generational Change. Are you there, my brother?
He's figuring it out because he's in Niagara Falls.
Is that where you are? You may be on mute.
Wait, you might be muted.
You're muted.
You got to unmute.
You got to unmute, Chase.
Can you hear me?
You got to unmute. Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
So I think there may be a slight delay.
Are you in Niagara?
Okay, sweet. All right. Well, you know what?
Are you in Niagara Falls?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm at the bottom. We took a hike and I couldn't pass the opportunity up. We're actually in Niagara Falls at the invite of the Haudenosaunee people, or the Iroquois Nation, and some of the city leaders for the inaugural launch and official recognition of the first annual Indigenous Peoples Day and Indigenous Peoples Proclamation, which I'm just highly honored to even be here, to be pushing this work forward in a way that is impacting our collective foundational identities. You know, the way that Americans, the way that Canadians, the way that Indigenous nations have formed the archetypes and the substance, the substrate, the foundations of who we are. That is beginning to evolve and beginning to adapt because of movements like Indigenous Peoples Movement, Indigenous Peoples Day. We are entering a truth-telling stage in our country, and when we are looking at the roots of, you know, who we are, and this is a good thing, because for 500 years, indigenous peoples have been silenced, and you've not been able to hear, our agency, and our representation, the benefits and the struggles, the thoughts and the deliberations of our lives. They've been told through a colonial lens that didn't have our best interest in mind. And so for me to be on the show, for all of your listening audience, for people who are maybe on a path of self-education, Indigenous Peoples Day is extremely important, because on the one hand, I'm out in Niagara Falls at the invite of my Sicilian Italian brother, and they celebrate Christopher Columbus because they want to have heroes too, but they're willing to tell the truth, fly up 10,000 feet and look objectively at the conduct of a man who trafficked young girls, who raped people, and who was a genocidal maniac. But in our country, we've been taught to celebrate these settlers, these colonizers, because they are explorers, they are the pioneers, they are the hardy settlers, they tamed the West. So the cultural mythology of that we now share. I was raised in an American school system, so I know exactly what these colonial institutions are propagating.
We lost him.
What happened?
But
it wasn't because you clicked something.
No.
All right, then he'll come back.
Okay.
Then he'll come back. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it may have been a connection.
But it had nothing to do with what you were doing. It was just coincidence that you were putting up a banner.
Yeah, it just so happened when I did that. That'd be a first.
No, I knew he was in Niagara Falls.
How did you know that?
Because I do my research.
Cool.
Because I knew that he was one of the speakers at this meeting.
Tough connection out in the woods.
No, I'm jealous. I love that area.
Jen thought I had clicked you off by accident.
Because he was in the process of putting up a banner, and as soon as he clicked it, you went away. I'm like, what did you do to him? Where did he go?
I had enough of this explaining about us white people being such terrible
No,
people.
I can hear it forever, because I have a lot of thoughts on how we were raised, and that it was so unproductive in terms of building a strong, sustainable civilization. And all it served was to sort of create division and to tear us down. And I am very appreciative for people like you that are bringing so much more attention to this. I think he's going to have technical problems.
There may be some.
Yeah, he's on a good hike, and I'm trying to sell my dog to my kid, and it's not working so well.
All right. Well, we got some pictures.
I do apologize.
That's okay, Chase.
I think that they're not there. I got to open the door.
Okay.
She's just going to sit there scratching. No one's here. So see if we can get him figured out. There's no one here.
How's that, Chase?
Graham, can you please take Sophie? I don't care. Take Sophie.
Can you? Yeah, I apologize. I think I don't know what caused that last difficulty, but I also run my own webcast, so I completely respect and appreciate if I cut out and you've got to just move on. But very quickly, we have this one day, and it's this one day that collectively we're starting to recognize it and to celebrate people who've been marginalized, deliberately marginalized. Now, this cuts right into Native American Heritage Month, and we look around and we're able to see, in a time of a climate crisis or climate change, however you want to look at that, it's no doubt that the human species is causing these responses from the environment. And Indigenous peoples, I want to highlight Standing Rock, the Dakota Access Pipeline, the Anishinaabe people who are defending their homelands at Line 3, and at the TMX, the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Indigenous nations are now able to access the mainstream. We're able to tell our own stories. That doesn't mean we all get the access on mainstream, but it's happening. indigenous peoples are reclaiming our agency, and you can see the results in like all of these institutions of American identity, like Native American mascots. You know, the practice of placing indigenous peoples in the realm of being America's mascots. You can see it changing at the Cleveland Indians, and I know people are confused because that just doesn't make any sense. Because we were trying to honor the indigenous people. You know, we're trying to honor you. How does that jive? Well, that's a long story, and you got to do a deep dive on your own to understand what forms our identities as American people. But the Washington Redskins, that one's a little easier to understand because that is a textbook racial slur, and we're glad that it's changing. And now, you know, our country for the first time is beginning to tell the truth. The boarding schools, the residential schools, which are, you know, that's a euphemism for what was happening at these places. And thankfully, we have survived, and we have kept intact all of our worldviews and our cultural practices that, you know, predated contact. And now that we also speak the English language, we're just better equipped and have a different responsibility to build bridges and to help our country, help this country that we signed treaties with, help this country evolve, because there are those forces out there who don't want to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, who are relying on the fear, doubt, and confusion of the American people so that they can be coerced into complacency or into just not being aware.
It froze. Hopefully it'll unfreeze.
I don't know.
Come on, baby.
It'll unfreeze. And look, it's not on our end though for this time.
Oh, for once.
I've been telling you for a very long time that human beings ought not be mascots. It's that simple. It's really not complicated.
Not just their constitutional rights or their legal rights, their civil rights, but their natural rights.
It keeps breaking up, Chase. It keeps breaking up. It keeps freezing. But
hopefully it'll unfreeze.
For anybody listening, I have been saying for a very long time, okay, he's coming in on another stream. All right, remove that one.
Okay. That's much better.
That's better. I wanted to tell you something that I've been saying this for eternity, that human beings ought not be mascots. Now, this is not something that I've ever thought I would distinguish between, okay, well, Redskins is a slur, but Indians isn't a slur. No, human beings ought not be mascots. And the only exception to that are occupations. I don't mind occupations. You want to be the Cowboys or you know, the boiler makers or whatever, fine. Human beings ought not be mascots, ever. It's not complicated, people. It's disrespectful. And I think that I agree, and I'm very pleased that more people are catching on to this. I am not probably typical. I love all things Indigenous in all continents. Like, I'm just one of those people that think of anything Indigenous as closer to the center of the earth. And so I just prefer it. Like, I like it. And I wanted to share with you something that happened a couple of years ago, because a couple of members of the Lakota Sioux came down here and did a nonviolence resistance training at FIU campus, which is down here in North Miami. And I went to it, and it was just so amazing, and I loved it so much. And one of the coolest things that I took from it, and it's interesting because it's something I've always done, but I never referred to it as this way. But one of the things that the Sioux went through was how to be a good relative. How to be a good relative. And there were certain things, and one of those things was lending your privilege. And I think of that pretty much every day. And that is something that really spoke to me. And I was very appreciative of hearing it that way. And I try to spread that as much as I can. But I could not be happier that there wouldn't, like, I like all things Indigenous. So for me, it's all good. Like, whatever it is you guys are doing in Niagara Falls is good. And in general, vulnerable communities need our help. It's really very basic. And vulnerable communities are communities that get screwed over in terms of not getting clean water, whether it's Black people in Flint, Michigan, or Indigenous people having pipelines drilled through their land. It's taking advantage of vulnerable people, and it's an injustice, and it's unacceptable.
I think that's a great transition, Chase, to just do a refresher of what went on at Standing Rock, what was going on with the Dakota Access Pipeline, the absolute desecration of your sacred land, all for the purpose of profit for big oil, nothing more, nothing less. And obviously, not much has changed since then. And so certainly if you can, just do a quick refresher of what that experience was like and more or less where we stand today with protecting native land.
Thank you for that. And it's really, I appreciate hearing about Bayou Bridge, because Indigenous nations, we don't know how long we've been here. We say we've been here for 100 million years. And because of this, we have sacred covenants with the universal elements to defend and protect, the other living beings' right to clean water, to clean ecosystems. That's how we manage the land. And so every season, if the seasons, our cosmology ties us to the changing of the seasons. So if we don't do our ceremonies, then the seasons might not change. We might not be gifted the responsibility of life, of living in a very difficult, life. The human condition is extremely difficult, but Indigenous nations have developed knowledge systems over multiple millennia that the American public is just now like, oh, wait a minute. They have their own ways of knowing what they are, who they are, and how to navigate this universe as human beings. And so we're hardwired in our DNA to defend the sacred sites, the waters, and then after that is our sovereign rights, our treaty rights. So we were living on the Standing Rock Reservation in 2016, and I was running for the United States Congress in a very, very, radical right state. These they are in lockstep with the radical fringe in this country that caused blood to spill in the United States Capitol January 6th. This is what I mean, that there are forces out there who are still trying to impose a very violent settler colonial practice and mentality. And we had to stand up to that at Standing Rock, because I was living on the Standing Rock Nation, trying to mind my own business, help my wife raise our family. And here comes Dakota Access Pipeline, Kelsey Warren, and says, you know what? We're going to disturb your peace. Your children are not going to be able to know peace anymore, because every night they got to go to bed wondering if 500,000 gallons of oil are going to spill into their only drinking source, water, and cause cancer to not only the human beings, but everything that's around there. So the voice of the voiceless is sometimes the protest or the civil resistance. And this is what happened at Standing Rock. And because I was organizing after I had lost the election, which, I had a very slim chance of winning that election anyway. But, when you're in it, you got to convince yourself that you can win. But after I lost, I then joined the Standing Rock Frontline Resistance. And because of my legal knowledge, I wanted to give to this struggle a spiritual, legal foundation and explain to the world why we were there and why the world, those who are also waking up, are invited to join us. When you talked about being a good relative, that's the substance, the essence of being Lakota. It means to be a good relative. And then we're talking with our human relatives, but it's also to the older gods, the sacred elementals that were here long before us. So we're defending that. And that's why Indigenous peoples are always on the front line, because we're like, yo, you're going to destroy my way of life here at line 3 with all of the wild rice. You're about to destroy the way that I feed my family. And I need these marshes and these 10,000 lakes to be healthy. so that we can live. And because we take those strong stances, American people are like, look it, I'm a public landowner too. I want clean water. I don't want big corporations to be able to shove down our throats whatever their energy policy is, or even sometimes their foreign policy. So if you look at Standing Rock, I would advise you to check out what the private military industrial complex had done to us, the way that they violated our rights, the way that they brutalized people. And it was kind of like, you know, when George Floyd was murdered, you saw the different kind of tentacles of that security state, but it's confused now. They called me a terrorist out there, and my daughter and my wife, everyone who was in the resistance. Now, after January 6th, it's much more difficult to call us terrorists, but we are still at risk because with the Dakota Access Pipeline, I'll end with this. There is two women. Jessica Reznicek was sentenced to 8 years in prison, federal prison, because of terrorism enhancements. Ruby Montoya is about to almost be sentenced here within a couple of months. And we do not want our government to be able to declare those who are defending the sacred and the healthy, clean ecosystems and waters of our country to be declared terrorists. We don't support violence, and we're looking to build that force and that bridge so that we can no longer be ignored.
I think that every time that people stand up for things that are somehow going to negatively impact capitalism, that is when those people are deemed terrorists, because you're threatening to destroy their capitalism. That's what, and that's the priority. And we are starting to see it with a whole bunch of different groups. Something that I really wanted to talk with you about that we hear get a little play, but not enough, is one of the things that happens with these drilling companies when they go in and they build the pipelines is the impact it's having on Native women. And I know that there are, I don't even know the number, you probably do, of missing Native women. And what's happening is these people that are worker people are going into these towns. They're there for whatever temporary periods of time, and they're using it as an opportunity to violate and abuse Native peoples. And because these are vulnerable communities, they tend to get away with it. And right now, I mean, please talk to this. There is this huge issue with missing Native women that are just gone. They're just missing because people are violating them. And what can we do? We need to get more attention on this. If it was any other group, yeah, I think we'd be hearing more about it. If there was if people were kidnapping women from the Upper West Side of Manhattan and they were just going missing, we'd probably all be wondering, oh, what happened to them? So, I mean, this is something that's plaguing me lately about these women. So if you would talk about that, because I know it's connected to the pipeline.
Yeah.
I know there's a connection.
It's horrible actually to even imagine. And I didn't know as a man that women in general, but Indigenous women live their lives differently because of the threat of violent patriarchy. Now, extractive capitalism coupled with, heteronormative violent patriarchy, that is what is causing, and it goes into the way that Indigenous women, Indigenous people have been portrayed as subhuman, as Saracen, as pagans, as barbarians, and that adds to the fetishization, to the objectification that patriarchy is able to execute because of the control of all the institutions of media, law.
Uh-oh.
Frozen screen again.
Uh-oh.
but I have no doubt Chase will be back.
But no, this is something that has been bothering me for a long time about the women.
Jeffrey, excellent point. That is 100% correct about what did happen. Bismarck, North Dakota is a middle and upper middle class white community.
Yeah.
And they didn't want it.
No, they don't want it in their backyard. So we should just shove it on the reservation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, you cut out. So I know that this woman issue is, and you're right. And we talk about it all the time. I don't know an adult woman that has not been violated. I don't know a single adult woman that has not been violated. And I know it's exponentially worse for Indigenous people.
I'll tell you what, you know, if I cut out again, maybe we're gonna have to run this back when I get to my studio. But I will say that 1 in 3 Indigenous females, Indigenous women will go missing, or will experience sexual violence, or will have some sort of violation of their person, of their body. 1 out of every 3. Nobody knows the true number of Native women who are missing, but what we do know is that extractive capitalism and the concept of man camps promotes and allows, even if it's because it's passive in it, it allows man camps to be built in the Bakken oil field. I used to be a judge for the Mandan Hidatsa Arikara Nation, which is choosing to develop their oil resources. And at Line 3, pipeline workers were actually caught in a trafficking sting. And it takes a deeper dive. A good friend of mine named Lissa Yellowbird Chase has a Dateline special, I believe it is, where she's been on this path of searching for and rescuing missing people. And I would advise you to kind of, you know, you got to do a little bit of a deeper dive into this phenomenon. But it comes from the way that Indigenous peoples have been dehumanized over time. And I know that those forces are, you know, committing violence on Indigenous women is part and parcel to committing violence on Mother Earth. It gives people the license to promote and continue that very you know, it's a horrific phenomenon that we're struggling to understand. We're reeling from it, and Indigenous women are hardly ever centered. Look at, I mean, rest in peace to Gabby Petito. But you're right about the country and, you know, paying immediate attention, because every missing woman deserves that kind of attention. We are living in a very violent heteronormative patriarchy, but Indigenous women, for as much as it's possible, those who are in, that's why it's so hard to understand why mascots are offensive, because we're born into the dynamic of you're either the oppressed or you're part of the former oppressors or the former colonizers, and you need that power dynamic. You would have to imagine Adolf Hitler or the Nazis caricaturizing and forming their mascots out of Jewish people and Jewish symbols. That's kind of a way to understand what Indigenous peoples are going through when Americans are doing the same thing. I want to say that so it's, you got to try as hard as you can to graduate from your own what you grow, and that's just how I try to become a better bridge builder and a better communicator. But this is a horrific epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women, missing and murdered Indigenous Two-Spirits. All of these demographics have been targeted and are reeling, and we cannot stop talking about them.
We're speaking with Chase Iron Eyes, activist and attorney from Standing Rock in North Dakota. we had a question from Felix Rios. I do want to put it up again. He wanted to know, Chase, if you've been working on relocalizing or decentralizing local communities from corporations like Walmart and local power companies by investing in things like permaculture and solar tech. Obviously, anything that allows you to live more effectively off the grid. We obviously experience a lot of hell down here in Florida, particularly with Next Era Energy, which you're probably familiar with. They own Florida Power and Light. The devastation that they have done to the environment in Florida, especially to the Everglades and other areas. It goes without saying that a lot of what the natives in this country have experienced for centuries are things that white America is starting to experience, and they don't like it.
Right. So now they're paying attention.
Now they're
yes.
starting to recognize just how bad it is. So if you can talk about, your views on, let's say, permaculture and solar tech, that would be great. And hopefully that is just a temporary lapse with the connection. We understand. Chase is making an exception today, which we're very appreciative of, as you know. Indigenous, I got it.
Indigenous
Peoples Day is tomorrow. And so we just want to make sure that we are, covering these very important topics, because we have changed our format. But again, as I said, we're very appreciative that Chase is here today, despite the tough connection in the mountain region. But nevertheless, just to recap, Chase,
thoughts on self-sustainability.
Thoughts on self-sustainability, like permaculture gardens, solar tech, things like that.
Let me
realize that all those things were
I tell you what, I don't want to inconvenience the show, but let me make one more kind of an outro comment, and I'll come back on my studio. But I would tell you that that's a great question about decentralizing. I mean, culturally, this is a cultural match, the way that the Lakota people are nature. We don't like a centralized hierarchy. We just don't vibe with that very well. And we know that there are a lot of people who recognize the dependency that we have now, human beings have, on the big multinational agricultural food producers. For instance, if you've ever watched the movie Okja, we know our dependence on big pharma and on those industries that are almost trying to create sickness so they can sell you a temporary fix rather than give you the holistic spiritual cure so that we can set ourselves on that path. Well, it's the same thing with Indian reservations. On the reservation, I grew up on the Standing Rock Nation or Standing Rock Reservation, but my wife is from the Pine Ridge Reservation, which, if you haven't seen Incident at Oglala, you need to watch that, because there is a hidden civil war that was caused there by our government. And anyway, we're still reeling from the wounds of that era in the 70s. But recently, a guy named Alex White Plume, he's got a documentary called Standing Silent Nation. He tried to grow hemp, and because hemp is considered part of the reefer madness era and the Marijuana Tax Act, when through our own sovereign right, one of our tribal members, one of our indigenous citizens, tried to grow hemp, the DEA came out with helicopters. The Department of Justice, U.S. Marshals, they came out in full combat gear with their assault rifles, and they cut this old man's crop down. And we're doing this because we want to decentralize our dependence. We do not want to be dependent on anything that flows through those extractive capital channels, even though, we're living within our time right now. As indigenous citizens, we have three different identities, that one that is older than America, one that, and not only just identities, but places where we draw rights, privileges, and immunities and authorities, our sovereignty. One is before America was formed. One is now American because America imposed citizenship on us in 1924. And another is through whatever state or county or municipal setup that we live around, or that now surround us. So we are trying to create economies of scale that work for indigenous communities, indigenous nations, and now even cannabis is part of that deployment. If you look up the Flandreau Santee Sioux Tribe, and they're north of a town called Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They're the first people from our communities to have a cannabis operation. But so these plants, you know, they're teaching human beings to return to a regenerative.
That's okay.
And he's making, you know, very clear points that
I know.
we talk about.
We'll need to schedule him again when he's like back home in
Hi,
in the
Elijah.
studio. Hi, Elijah.
Oh my gosh, guys. Okay, I'm gonna gracefully bow out, you guys. But
That's fine.
you know what? It's been my
we'd love
honor,
to
and I
have
will
you
come back
back.
on again.
We would love to have you back
Okay.
when we can really chat. All
We
right.
definitely got some really great points, Chase.
Thank
and
you.
again, the fact that you're even willing to take the time today, this is a very important day, 2 days, to really highlight the importance of, you know, our first people. And we cannot emphasize enough that you are our first people. And we as Americans like to whitewash our history.
Thank you for your time. And we definitely want to talk again. Have a fun hike.
Absolutely. We're together in this. Doksha.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chase.
I don't blame him. He's in Niagara Falls having a hike.
Well, needless to say, all of the work he does is exceptionally important. And we see all the time that all too often, as we like to say, people only really care about these things when it's convenient to care about them. You know, it's like we have certain holidays. And in reality, a lot of holidays are set up so people can pretend like they give a damn for one day and then they could go back to their daily lives.
Yeah. I just, to me, I love all things Indigenous and of all continents, mind you. Like, I like all of it. I really do. I think these are the people that had it right the first place, infinitely better than we did. And we came in and ruined everything. We ruined everything.
And of course, you know, I was very young when I saw Dances with Wolves, and I wasn't able to really understand the movie the way that I did when I was an adult. But, you know, even then, even as a kid, recognizing that one of the biggest things, and this is Kevin Costner's best movie if you've never seen it.
In your opinion?
In my opinion. I mean, you can argue Field of Dreams and JFK, and there's a few others. I know a lot of people love Bull Durham. No Way Out's also a great one. But my point is, just the whole concept of recognizing the way that Native cultures valued every single living creature, even if they were meant for slaughter, the way that they treated the buffalo, not just for its food, but for its hide, for its bones, for everything. And in our country, the only thing that we gave a damn about was the value of their hides, maybe their food, but most of the time didn't give a damn.
But and it's always self-serving. It's never in concert with the nature of things. And that's something that is, we're never going to work without that. Like, I feel like it's just so interesting to me, and we will come full circle back to that way of life. That's where we're headed, because our level of commerce, capitalism, city life, all of that, it's not sustainable. And ultimately, I do believe we're going to end up going back in the direction that we came from, which is smaller, sustainable communities and living off of the earth. And you know what? The Indigenous people are going to survive infinitely. Well, white people will be dying off by in droves.
Because they can't adjust.
No,
they can't adjust. And so, and this is actually a good, I wouldn't even call it a segue, but just a good point to mention. This morning, going to the protest in Hollywood Beach, they are trying, the developers, and we know who they are, and they grease the wheels of our city commissions, county commissions, and so on. They want to build a monstrosity of a 30-story condo complex right on Hollywood Beach. And where do they want to build this? Funny you ask. They want to tear down the community center. You know that place where you go and vote right at the beach?
Wait, you're talking about the place where we have all the meetings?
They're trying to tear that down.
Hollywood Beach and Cultural Center? So that they can
build up another concrete jungle. And one of the great things, and hats off to Kat Uden of Oshana. She was a leader of the protest today, and she brought it up, and it's absolutely true. We don't want Hollywood turning into Sunny Isles.
No.
And for anybody who knows anything about Sunny Isles, which is part of Miami-Dade County, but it is part of the district that Jen ran in, it is a district that is completely overrun by corporate special interests.
It's just concrete as far as the eye can see.
And as high
as you
can
can't,
make it.
It's all concrete.
And all I could think of is, if there is a part of our state that is going to feel it first and the hardest when it comes to the climate crisis, this is it.
We're in it.
And this is billions of dollars in lost money, but also, Jen, which is a good thing to discuss before we get into Florida news, all of the displaced people that are going to suffer because of the fact that we are not getting out of South Florida the way that we need to. We do not have proper evacuation plans.
That's what we need to be working on, people.
And what's even more amazing, and I hate to get all biblical, not trying to take you to church right now, but it's basically like the four angels sounding the trumpets. They're basically letting you know that the rapture is here. When that building collapsed in Surfside,
it should have been a sign.
That was a sign. Get the hell out of here.
Well, and here's the thing that makes me, and I just thought of this now, is we're going to need to spend time preparing the rest of the world for the influx of Floridians that are going to be coming your way. Let me apologize ahead of time on that, because that's going to be the real travesty. The real travesty is going to be for the people that are enjoying their lives outside of Florida. And now you're going to have a Florida refugee crisis.
Florida
refugee. And I got to tell you something, people. If you live on the edge of Georgia or Alabama, I'd start building a wall if I were you.
Well,
because you're going to need to keep the Floridians out, and it's going to be ugly when they have to be fighting for dry land.
And what I would say is this: when you're talking about where it's going to actually happen, like where do you draw the line? And I think we're both in agreement that the line is Lake Okeechobee.
Well, geographically speaking, everything south of Lake Okeechobee is going to get washed back into the Everglades from where it came. Mm-hmm. Because as much as we think we're stronger than the earth and that we can control things and dredge water and build canals and do all sorts of stuff to put houses where they ought not be, given that I'm living in one, the earth will eventually reclaim itself.
It always does.
And so when we're all running to higher ground, which is going to happen, the closest place I believe will be whatever is north of Lake Okeechobee, because Lake Okeechobee, the south of it, used to flow directly into the Everglades, and it was all swamped from there on down, and that's where we're headed back to.
And the truth of the matter is, when you calculate exactly how many residents, remember, Florida is now unbelievably, the third most populous state in the country. And it is the most narrow state in the country.
And what percentage do you think lives south of Lake Okeechobee?
Half the population.
At least half.
You're talking Fort Myers, Sarasota.
Now, let me
Naples.
be clear. There are certain ridges that might stay above water. Actually, where I live might be. But you will need a boat to be able to access any other parts of dry land.
Let's put it this way. We're talking about...
But sure, keep building condos.
Yeah, if you're talking about Miami and Fort Lauderdale, it's game over.
They can keep sitting there and spinning their wheels, and that's fine. But building another condo, I can tell you, is
and that's why, again, I know a lot of people like him, and I know he's a pleasant guy, but you know what? Mayor Trantillis of Fort Lauderdale is emblematic of the problem, because he is the problem. He is willing to sell out South Florida residents for another one of these vanity projects by Elon Musk. He wants to put an underground, not even just a tunnel for rich people. He wants an underground tunnel under limestone in Florida. And this is all for rich people. Everyone knows that it is. It is because of the overwhelming congestion problem that the Fort Lauderdale metropolitan area has. And there are a lot of people with a lot of money who don't like being inconvenienced. So now they want to build a tunnel to the beach.
With a pod, a transport pod that transports people from downtown to the beach. The beauty of this, though, is that it will be traveling through a broken and crumbling infrastructure filled with sewage that they don't seem to want to fix. So it's interesting that we could dig down to send rich people quickly from downtown to the beach, but we can't dig down to repair the broken infrastructure so that the regular people don't have sewage floating in their streets.
I don't know. This just kind of, in a lot of ways, just feels like we're watching the Titanic all over again with the rich people who are like, this ship can't sink. Oh, yes, it can.
And you know what? Let them all go down with the ship. I'm going to be in the mountains.
Probably.
I will be in the mountains, but you know what? I feel like the native peoples are the peoples that have had it right the whole time.
Well, speaking of the...
Oh, and by the way, I wanted to just say this to you quickly. When he was talking about what it would be like if, when Hitler was using Jewish people and as like objects and as things, I've always said this, unless you would be okay with a team called the Brooklyn Kikes, You ought not be liking any sort of team that's calling Native Americans a mascot.
Especially the Redskins. I mean, that was.
It's all the same.
And not only that,
it's all the same. That's what he's saying. That's what I've been saying. I don't care if it's the Seminoles, the Cleveland Indians, the whatever it is. Human beings ought not be mascots.
And what's even more interesting is the fact that it's not just that they're not changing. It's Dan Snyder. Again,
this is the Washington asshole.
He is a very wealthy and a very arrogant owner.
And so as a matter of principle, he's doing
he
what?
Won't even name the team. He will just call them the Washington football team. And that's his protest. But that just goes to show you that he's a whiny little bitch.
Well, that just really shows you how small-minded people are.
He is.
Yeah, human beings ought not be mascots. And it's that simple. There is numerous amounts of animals. You got bears, you got panthers, there's numerous animals. There's weather systems, heat, there's all sorts of things that you can use besides human beings as mascots. And the fact that we think of human beings as mascots, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And I don't care if it's not a derogatory term. What if it was just a team called the Brooklyn Jews? The Jews. It's not derogatory. It's just a name. Would we be okay with that? I don't think so.
The Brooklyn Shysters.
Okay, well, see, that's derogatory. But I'm saying, what if it was just any group of people?
I'm just saying that.
I'm just saying, so the equivalent to Cleveland Indians is Brooklyn Jews. Do we like that, people? Because I don't. It feels icky to me, even though it's not a slur. I don't know. Wake the hell up. People aren't mascots. Anyway, I digress.
So we've got some very interesting Florida stories.
We do have some good focus on Florida.
Which one do you want to start with?
Do you want to? I don't know. I mean, I think, okay, no, let's start. No, we're not going to start there. Start here. This I thought you would dig.
Yes. So we do have some very interesting stuff.
Did you look at that, by the way?
So speaking of, okay, so, we're just going to start with some comedy.
It's not funny. It's true.
I think it is funny.
I think it's great.
Listen, I have no problem with it. I think it'd be hysterical and in a good way. So Lee County, it doesn't take a genius to know. Lee County's in the central part of Florida. And of course, it is.
Where is Lee? What's Lee County?
West, Central West.
Okay.
Lee is.
Look it up.
It's like Fort Myers. It's like that area. So
Fort
anyway,
Myers is Lee. Yeah, maybe. So that's not central. That's like south. Okay, but anyway,
sort of. It's a blend between central.
Lee County, which we know who it's really named after.
Mr. Confederate Champion of the World,
Robert E. Lee. Well, apparently, a new Change.org petition is seeking to rebrand Lee County in Florida to Bruce Lee County. And I got to tell you,
I think that's pretty creative.
I think it's friggin' awesome. You want to call it Lee County? Have it be Bruce Lee County. So in an effort to eradicate racism in both Florida and across the country, a local arts organization is calling for the rebrand instead of a complete name change to minimize costs, very efficient,
right,
while still changing the narrative behind the county's namesake. In the petition, a group of artists say they chose Bruce Lee to replace Confederate General Robert E. Lee as the county namesake because of his impact as a leading actor, martial artist, pop culture icon of his time. How about the fact that he just wasn't, a mass murderer? Let's just go with that.
He was a very influential guy and a guy that a lot of people really
So here's the history. Lee County was originally named in 1887 at the behest of prominent Fort Myers citizens and Confederate Captain Francis Hendry. Hendry was a fan of the controversial general who over time was transformed into a pillar of the South, despite being responsible for hundreds of thousands of American deaths in Civil War. By the way, at one point, Robert Lee's family owned hundreds of enslaved people.
Oh, shocking.
Yes. So kudos to change.org. Actually, guys, I think we should all go on change.org petition and just look up the one that's for changing Lee County. Let's sign that. Let's change that to Bruce Lee County. Look, if anywhere could have something called Bruce Lee County, it's Florida.
Hey, you know what? Bruce Lee County, I think they would, but quite frankly,
I love it.
That is not only a great idea. I think it would attract a lot of people just if they set up like a Bruce Lee Center or something like that.
How about like a Bruce Lee? First of all, it lends itself to extremely cool monuments.
Yes.
Like if I'm going to have to look at a monument of someone, those abs. If I'm going to have to look at a monument of someone, it should be a brick shit house like Bruce Lee. That's what I'm thinking.
And speaking of more Florida craziness, which is just unbelievable.
Wait, get rid of that.
So in Florida, we, for some reason, are noted for being the worst place for laser strike attacks.
Second worst. And that's something that I never even knew was a thing. So here is something that came up that I thought was very interesting. So as of September 30th, there have been 434 laser strikes against airplanes in Florida. And by the way, that's only the third state that has had it. First is California, second is Texas, third is Florida. And apparently, laser incidents, this is a quote, laser incidents have been really a problem with aviation going back at least a decade. This is about people pointing laser pointers at night as planes are taking off or landing. The laser goes into the pilot's eyes. You could actually cause them blindness because these are very high-powered lasers.
Imagine wanting to do that.
The numbers released by the FAA show Central Florida is a target. Not shocking. It is the most visited, Disney World's the most visited place on Earth, so it's not surprising. 45 laser strikes have been reported in Orlando, 27 in Melbourne, and 8 in Daytona Beach. This is about the potential threat of laser strikes leaves pilots with less reaction time when they are close to the ground. This is crazy. Like that you can, I mean, this is really, the FAA reports those who were caught shining lasers at airplanes could face penalties, violators could face a fine of up to $11,000 per violation and up to $30,000 for multiple. How about incarceration? How about that? How about charging that as an attempted murder situation? Because that's what that is. Or at a minimum, you're talking negligent, depraved, indifferent homicide. I mean, this is crazy. You're shooting lasers in the eyes of pilots flying planes. That's dangerous. But anyway, Florida's number 3.
Yeah, and again, that's a very creative photograph, Jen, of having them go down with the ship. So to speak.
I know. Isn't that
But
cool?
if that's not enough, and of course it would behoove us not to mention the fact that Governor DeSantis and his GOP underlings are actually pursuing financial damages from the 8 school boards, in the state. Broward, of course, is one of them, that is requiring a mask mandate. Oh my God. So terrible.
So this has been going back and forth for people who have been watching, and basically it's a pissing match. This is a pissing match. This is an ego pissing match because there is no legitimate reason. There isn't. It's just a pissing match.
Absolutely.
And this is really also a political strategy for DeSantis, building up his base, firing up voters, getting everybody all fighting against themselves. But apparently now it's working. So do you want me to read it or do you want to read it?
What would you prefer?
Florida is set to dock salaries and withhold funding from local school districts that defied Governor DeSantis' ban on pandemic mask mandates. The Florida State Board of Education approved plans. So our State Board of Education has approved plans to deduct an amount equal to a month's pay from school board members in 8 counties, including in some of the state's biggest cities, which we know one of them is here. Broward is one of them.
Yes.
So they're taking a month's salary, docking a month's salary from school board members. Now, we could argue as to whether or not I think those should be paid positions or not, regardless.
All right. So you know what? I thought
that's another issue.
I thought they were taking salaries directly from teachers.
No, they're taking it from school board members.
All right.
However, these are people that are working in the best interest of children and in the best what they are seeing as actual science and reason.
This is 100% a politically motivated move.
So the penalties would go into effect in 48 hours if the districts do not let parents opt their children out of mask mandates. This is just strong arming and bullying. And I hope, and by the way, this is one reason why I don't think school board members should be paid. It's almost like you're giving a financial incentive to people to be acting in terms of their bottom line, in terms of best interest of children.
Well, this is the same thing you mentioned when it comes to judges being appointed.
Yeah.
And not elected.
Yeah. It's kind of like you're giving the accountability. You're taking their own judgment accountability away and forcing them in line, in which case, what's the point of even having a board?
That's a good point.
And we could talk about the salary thing. I'm not like really married to it either way. I'm just saying that it's not cool. It's not cool to be docking them for doing what's in the best interest of children. That's a problem. So why don't you do this story? Because that's one of your
which
big
is one of the
things
things that I'm a huge proponent of high-speed rail. Brightline is the high-speed rail system that is in Florida that has been attempted to be built for the longest time. I don't need a story.
Okay, you don't want to read. I'm trying to give people facts and information. You don't want to do that?
No, but I guess I'll read. The
I
story
try to at least talk about the story that we're posting.
Well, it's 320 miles from Miami, and I'm not sure directly where in that of Miami we're talking about. My guess is that it would be someplace close to the Miami International Airport, or it could potentially be someplace near downtown Miami. That'd be very interesting to see how that would work. My guess is that it would probably be near Coral Gables.
Why don't we read it? See, that's the whole beauty of
Okay.
it. So,
Okay.
then you do it, but read the facts.
By 2028, Brightline hopes to launch higher speed passenger train service along an 8,320 mile rail network stretching from Miami to Orlando to Tampa Bay. Okay, that's good. So it's actually 3 stops. So we are challenging the way that we move from city to city. We are challenging the automobile. And again, what you're really challenging is Florida Power and Light, NextEra Energy, because they don't want this. This is not good for business. It's good for the citizens of Florida, and it's good for reducing our carbon footprint. It's also good for interstate commerce. So there's a lot of things that are beneficial to the high-speed rail. And this doesn't even go nearly as far as it needs to go, which is, of course, it needs to go from Miami to Tallahassee. It needs to cover the state. It needs to go from Miami. Frankly, it needs to go from Miami to West Palm to Orlando to Tampa to Gainesville to Tallahassee.
It does.
That's where it needs to go.
And it could keep going straight up to, well, actually, we're talking about it needs to be a couple of lines. You need to have a line that runs north-south. This isn't complicated.
Not
you could
at
actually
all.
do a straight line from Miami to Jacksonville. It's not complicated. It goes straight up 95. And then there also needs to be divergent lines that cross through the center of the I-4 corridor and that continue up 75 into the Panhandle. It's really not complicated, people. It's just a matter of priorities.
One of the reasons that I have considered the prospect of running for the Commissioner of Agriculture is because this is an issue that is very near and dear to me. There is no excuse for us not to have high-speed rail. None whatsoever. But again, we know why we don't have high-speed rail. We have a megaopoly conglomerate of our energy system. It is controlled by Florida Power and Light, which is owned by NextEra Energy. It is also one of the biggest financial contributors, not just to our Congresswoman, but to a lot of elected representatives at the local, state, and federal level, mostly the state and federal level. But it's a big problem. And the fact that it's 2028, that it's going to take us 7 years.
Well, wait a second. Passenger service is expected to begin in early 23 on the privately held company's $2.7 billion extension linking South Florida with Orlando International Airport. Now, my understanding was that the original, when Brightline started here, we were going to get to Orlando. Like that was the thing. We were building the train from Miami to Orlando. It would stop in Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, or wherever, and it was going to Orlando. We still haven't even gotten that. Still haven't gotten a train to Orlando.
And this project has been going on since I moved to Florida, probably even before that. So these things just get marred in bureaucratic red tape. Obviously, it's probably a huge problem in Tallahassee. But this is the type of thing that I would think is not a partisan issue. This is something that everybody should be able to get behind.
Although, mind you, trains will take little more than 3 hours to travel between Orlando and Miami. So that's really not that great of a savings for people who know. I mean, it takes you out of traffic, but
long?
3 hours from Miami to Orlando.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not great,
But
though.
in terms of how fast high-speed rail
Right.
is really supposed to
And
be.
here's the best. Tickets will cost about $100 one way.
Oh, my God. You see, this is what I'm talking
Because
about.
it's a private company.
Yeah, that's
So they have
it.
investors that they have to be feeding.
So why are we not making this part of our budget in Tallahassee? Why are we not looking to make transportation
I can
better?
tell you, because the people in Tallahassee are getting kickbacks from the people that own this business
I
so
have
that they
no
can
doubt.
all keep making money.
Bingo. So it's on us. And this is why, like I said, it's not that I want to run a statewide race. It's because I feel I have to do this, because somebody has to be able to cultivate large swaths of the population and let them know just what's really going on. We should have these things.
Oh my God. But in all reality, we have a national transportation crisis, with the exception of a few urban places that have decent city transport. Like there's decent transport in New York. Like some places have decent city transport, but our national transport is horrible. We're like we're still like running steam engines. You know what I mean? Like we're so far behind where
Felix,
the rest of the world
reason
is.
why we do this is because so long as we're here, we make the most of what we've got. And who knows, if we actually did really reduce our carbon footprint, we might buy another decade or so.
You know what, Felix? I think I'm kind of with you. Let's just start the southernmost tip of the rail at Lake Okeechobee and just bring it north and screw the rest.
Well,
of
that's
the
probably the
people.
only way you're going to get people out of here anyway. But it's again, that's the Florida problem, is trying to convince people that this isn't going to last.
No.
but it won't last because we're seeing it in real time. Even when it just rains for a few hours, you have
it's ugly.
flooding.
Oh yeah,
It's bad.
it's bad.
So not to say that.
And by the way, it
Florida's
doesn't need to be
always have a
running.
problem.
We could be having a king tide and the weather is totally clear and Miami is underwater.
Well,
It's
but on a brighter note, we are going to speak with a gentleman who is running for the U.S. We'll finish with that.
Because
We are going to bring in Neal Walia. I hope I said it right. He is a friend.
I'm going to say Walia.
Well, we'll find out.
I'm going to say Walia. We have to have this.
He is a friend of a friend.
A friend of a friend.
Well, Fidel recommended him.
I know.
So,
no, but we love to platform good candidates anyway. So.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, Colorado's first district may be close to where you live.
No, it's Denver. It covers Denver, but I don't know how wide it goes. And yeah, I don't, I am a Colorado alum. So for people who don't know, I lived in Boulder for 4 years. It's one of the greatest places in the country. And that was where I met my husband. And actually, it was just, I went straight from Miami to Boulder as soon as I could. Like right out of high school. That was it.
So if you have any reason to go back and visit, maybe it might be to help this gentleman. So without further ado, Neal Walia, who is a congressional candidate running for Colorado's first district. Welcome to Generational Change.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the platform, y'all. And my name is Neal Walia. So just saying.
How do you like that? I said it right.
All right.
Jen likes to rag on me because I can't say indigenous.
You have issues with certain words. There's certain words that you can't.
Well, I'm from New Jersey, so of course the part of the country I come from, we are made fun of for our accent,
as well you should,
lingo, and all that good jazz.
Yeah.
So Neal,
you're our first Colorado person.
Oh,
that's important.
Giving me that honor. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, not by design. I loved Colorado. I actually did go there. So I have a very strong affinity for that. But talk a little bit about where District 1 is. I know it encompasses Denver. I don't know how gerrymandered you are or what that looks like, but talk a little bit about the district that you're representing or looking to represent.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a nutshell, you could describe our first congressional district as Denver County. So essentially anything with the Denver zip code. And, for anyone who's been to Colorado, we know that there are, hundreds of neighborhoods in Denver, and that encompasses a lot of territory. And so, yeah, that's, I think, the general best way to describe it. It's basically Denver County. Yeah.
And what's the representation been like in that district? Like, who is that? What have they been doing? Or better yet, what have they not been doing? And also, I think part of it is probably a certain amount of frustration on your part or everyone's part that they're not doing what they need to be doing. But also we're seeing across the country so many demographic changes that the population's needs are changing. So even if some people were doing helpful things in the past, it's not helping us now. So, but talk a little bit about where you have been as a district, like what that looks like and what's not happening that needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been paying attention to Colorado in the last 10 years, or let's say even just Denver alone, you've seen a number of amazing progressive accomplishments that have happened, especially at the state and local level, right? For example, recreationalizing cannabis. We ended qualified immunity for law enforcement officers here. We ended the death penalty here. 2016 and 2020 both went to Bernie in the primary. And so we have long seen a very strong progressive spirit here in our first congressional district. But I think the frustrating part is when you take that look up at our congressional representation, it is not matching, I think, the true essence of what Denverites want in a congressional representative. And, our opponent is a 25-year career politician, corporate Democrat. Definitely would describe them as kind of an old guard progressive. And, you made an important point, right? Like, I don't think there's inherently anything wrong about what our opponent has done over the course of their career, but they are not matching, I think, the needs of Coloradans at this moment in time. And people in our district are looking for someone who is an aggressive champion of the environment. They are looking for people who will champion healthcare as a human right. And they are looking for individuals to bring bold criminal justice reform to the forefront of the national dialogue. And our take is that our opponent is just not the model at this moment in time and what our citizens need going forward.
And it's a really great point because, again, you could have marginally decent representation, but as you alluded to, 25 years in elected office, that's a career politician. And that's not what this is supposed to be. This is supposed to be public service. you are supposed to be representing your constituents up to a point.
Yeah.
And the fact that they think that they could just, hang around forever.
Well, they get away with it in most cases. That's the problem. I mean, we see it, obviously. I mean, so what's it feel like for you in your area against your establishment Democrats? What's the consensus amongst your Democratic groups? Like, are you getting ghosted? Are you, because that's what they did to us. They just pretended we
in trouble with this question. No. So I think the answer is it's kind of a split, right? We all recognize that there are a lot of Democrats who benefit from the current model, right? A lot of them have a fundraising apparatus attached to the establishment. A lot of them are secure in their seats, and they're not looking to necessarily bite the hand of Colorado's most powerful congressional representative, right? That's real. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of great state and local representatives who recognize the same thing that I recognize, that we all need a major step forward in terms of the types of priorities we choose to champion as a district. And thankfully, we have seen a lot of outpour from state and local representatives who are kind of in the same lane that I am politically. And we're looking to kind of highlight that support over the course of the next quarter.
So what would you say are the key? I mean, I feel like we ask this question and we always get kind of the same answers because we're all having the same issues. Like, we all want Medicare for all. We all want everybody to have housing and, well, I shouldn't say we all, but we all here and want people to have education and want people to have those things. But what is your housing situation? I remember when I was moving out of there, it was harsh. When I left, and okay, granted, I'm old. It's been a long time. So it was already starting to get extremely gentrified in Denver very badly. You saw it I forget the name of the neighborhood, whatever is around the zoo. You're not far from Cherry Creek, like that area where you had cute little, arts and crafts style homes and everything was all cute. And then nobody could afford to live there anymore.
Yeah.
So what's your housing situation like right now in Denver?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if anybody is paying attention to the Denver market in general, housing is more expensive than it's ever been, I think, in the history of our city and our state in Colorado. And so with that comes some real challenges, right? On one hand, we're seeing a lot of historic communities that have lived in Denver for decades, right? We had a large Black community in Five Points, which used to be called the Harlem of the West. You would not necessarily be able to recognize that anymore. If you walked into that neighborhood in North Denver, we have a very vibrant Chicano community that continues to have to move further north just because the rise of property costs is doing that for a lot of Coloradans. And I would say that right now you're seeing a lot of exit from Denver for those communities who have built Denver into the place that it is. And in the process, with rising, costs of housing, you have seen, homelessness increase over the course of the last decade. I certainly think that COVID kind of blew the roof off on that issue. And so what's really sad to see right now is that when you walk out, pretty much anywhere, if you're close to downtown, you will see a large number of individuals. You will see a large number of camps starting to occupy different blocks. And, it's certainly, I think, front of mind for a lot of Coloradans, especially a lot of Denverites of, how do we address this growing concern? Because Colorado continues to grow. Right. I think some of us expected that to slow down during COVID, but the opposite happened. And we have to continue thinking about our unhoused population and coming up with real solutions to take our neighbors off the streets. Right. Like, I think that's something we all want to see.
What's your background? Like, where are you coming from? Tell me you're a teacher. Are you a teacher? We get so many teachers that are doing this.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you kind of my career post undergrad.
I mean, we don't need a resume. I'm sure you're qualified. I'm just curious what your background is.
Yeah. So I did teach for 2 years, but I did teach overseas. So I taught English in Japan for 2 years, but then I came back to Colorado for graduate school, went to the University of Colorado at Denver, and I immediately started working for the governor, who is currently the senator of Colorado right now, Senator Hickenlooper, when he was governor back in the day. I worked on a team that was focused on ending homelessness. So that is an issue that is very near and dear to my heart. And then I took that out to Washington, D.C. for 4.5 years. I worked at the National Governors Association and a few other companies who operated, literally in the halls of Congress. And so my background has definitely been mostly in the public sector.
Yeah.
So you are friends with Fidel Kaboub, and I am curious if that
Yeah.
has a direct connection as it relates to modern monetary theory,
Yeah,
federal jobs guarantee, if those particular types of
yeah.
policies are ones that interest you and ones that you support.
Absolutely, right. I mean, Fedel and I have developed a really good relationship, and I'm very thankful for his support over the course of my journey. And when I started exploring the prospect of running for Congress and kind of started quietly assembling a movement of individuals, community members, and electeds who wanted to fight this fight with me. Thankfully, through the right people in my network, Fedel heard of what we were trying to do and immediately took an interest in this race. And yeah, we definitely share a lot of the MMT priorities that all of us want to see, including a job guarantee, which is definitely something that we'll continue to champion throughout the course of this campaign. Yeah.
One of the things that Colorado, obviously, as you said, Colorado is definitely one of the most progressive states, underrated progressive.
Yeah.
They obviously were the first champion of legalizing cannabis.
Where was that when I was in college, by the way? You know what I'm saying? We had it the hard times. We were in hard times.
When you went to college
weed
in
was
Colorado,
scarce.
When you went to college in Colorado, it was a very red
All right,
state
I was
at
there
that time.
88 to 92.
Very
So,
red.
but
Yeah.
interestingly, I
Very
was a
red.
volunteer on Senator Lamb's senatorial
Yeah.
campaign back when I'm old, back in the day. And that was really my first real kind of getting involved at that level in politics anyway, but I digress.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, what I was alluding to was the fact that you guys did attempt to push. You were the first state that really had some momentum to try to pass statewide single-payer health care. Now, of
Sure.
course, we know what happened with Colorado Care. There is a very, we'll just say, a disadvantage, significant statewide disadvantage that you have, as it is written into, I believe, the state constitution. Can you just refresh people as to what that is and why Colorado Care was not able to succeed when it was first attempted to be pushed through?
So if I'm not mistaken, I think you're alluding to the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, which is TABOR, right? Essentially, we're locked into an old agreement that essentially says we can't increase taxes beyond a certain rate, and anything that goes above that mark, we're supposed to, in theory, return that money back to the hands of Coloradans in the form of a check, right? And I think what's really challenging about that is when you have committed to kind of like a budget cap that you agreed upon, decades ago at this stage, it doesn't evolve with the needs of society. It doesn't evolve with the needs of government. And with a growing population every single day, with an increasing unhoused population every single day, with Coloradans not having access to things like healthcare, to access like things like good transportation, good roads, you need to increase that budget to address some of the most critical issues pressing us as a society. And that's something that, constitutionally we have had a really tough time overcoming. And it's something that I think we're going to continue to have to grapple with as a state. And in my opinion, it's only going to unfortunately hurt us more as we move forward.
With Representative DeGette, one of the things that we really try to emphasize here is that the power of the federal seat goes a long way, and it doesn't have to be felt on Capitol Hill. To be honest, it's actually much more important at the local level. Having the weight of that federal seat can have incredible impact on just engaging the local community. And I have no doubt that if you were in that position, that is something that would be a priority, as you alluded to. Having housing for all as an option is obviously very important. Denver has become one of the most expensive cities in the country to live in. It does not compute with the wages that people are making in the city. Obviously, it's another branch of Silicon Valley. That's another problem. We're having that here in South Florida now, so I'm sure you're very well aware of what that does. What is your game plan? Because one of the things we always like to talk about is the importance of formulating strong local relationships in terms of building that base of support.
And especially with labor.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what are your, that is definitely a good place to wind down the conversation is talk about your game plan. You know, how are you going? It's obviously going to be very tough on the first try, but if you at least have the opportunity to build a solid foundation, how are you going about doing that at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I appreciate the opportunity to answer it. So, you know, we just closed our first quarter, and we raised over 6 figures, right? And that was on, you know, a pure grassroots platform. We haven't accepted a single penny from any corporations, any PACs. That has all been through like honest peer-to-peer engagement, and that has been something that has been very rewarding for us to see, right? And I think all of us recognize that in this campaign game that we all play, that first quarter is an essential mark to hit, right? If you can signal, especially if you're doing what I'm doing, right, which is essentially it's a Cinderella story, right? People want to see, can you raise funds, right? Are you the real deal? A lot of people can talk a big game, but can you actually do the hard work of, you know, putting together a real campaign? And thankfully, with the support of our communities, you know, and a lot of allies that we've built over the course of this campaign and throughout my career, we hit that number, right? And so that was a big focus of quarter one, which is establishing that we are a real candidate and not just another pipe dream campaign trying to do the right thing. And so now that we've hit that mark, we have to start spending a little bit of that money and growing what we've done. And I think what we're hoping to do over the course of the next quarter, one, you know, double that fundraising goal, obviously. Two, you know, start actually showing the relationships that we've built with state and local leaders, not just elected officials, but people who are deep rooted in their communities, people who are educators, people who are activists, organizers, and start to highlight the strength of that relationship. And then I think unleashing a very successful digital strategy is where we see a big opportunity to overcome our opponent on, is something that we're committed to this quarter. And, you know, like I said, our opponent has been around for 25 years. I think they rely on kind of like that old TV model style of engagement. And, you know, it'll be a lot of robocalls. It'll be a lot of kind of that passive engagement with their constituents. And we want to capitalize on that. And social media is something where I think we can do a lot better on than our incumbent. But that will then lead us into the next quarter, right, which will start, you know, in January. And I think that's when we've got to blow this up into the campaign of national proportion that it has to be. And that's when we've got to, you know, unleash something that we're developing right now, which is a very neighborhood-centric, door-to-door strategy of, you know, bringing in people not just who have voted traditionally in the past, but bringing in new voters that haven't had a reason to believe or haven't had a reason to want to actually participate in this process. And so that, I think, is kind of the general strategy that we're thinking about. And then, of course, you know, we've got to get a little more political and start taking some swings and highlighting the differences. And we haven't done that yet. I've been happy to have avoided that because, you know, I think we're really we want to build trust right now, right? And we want to talk about us. We want to talk about what we're trying to do and not make it necessarily about our opponent. So, and
that's a smart move. And let me say, like, it's one thing when you point out policies, votes, decisions that they've made. It's not personal. This isn't personal. Definitely. Then it's a matter of, okay, this is what differentiates. It should never get personal. We're infinitely better than that. And I think that really, once you accept that you're never going to outraise him, it's just not going to whatever. You're not going to outraise. That's not going to happen. But you're right. What she's going to rely on is mailers and all those things that just keep people and she doesn't have to do as much because she doesn't need the name recognition that you need. But you by going door to door, that's how you win. It's the only way. It's the only way to do it without money.
And that's also one of the big advantages that you do have in the Denver metro area is that it's very accessible. You can reach a lot of people, and the demographic has gotten a lot younger. And so that also plays a huge role. One of the reasons why, as you know, Jen ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. One of the major difficulties, too, I would say, in South Florida is that it is a much older, much more conservative demographic. And it's very hard to reach a lot of the voters.
There's a lot of gated communities and a lot of condos that you can't get in.
Right.
And so when the people with money can just send out mailers, that's a disadvantage. And the thing is, what grassroots campaigns, and you know it, the only way we win is on the ground.
And we had to
That's
do a
it.
lot when we ran. Look, we were still able to get almost 30% of the vote. We had to pull a lot of tricks to get into certain communities and be able to knock on the doors, drop the door hangers, do what we had to do to communicate
I don't
with
think
them.
there's too many gated communities in Denver, are there?
I mean, there's
They
some,
exist, but you know, I think you made an excellent point, which is one, you're right. Denver is an accessible city. We recognize that, and that's something that I think is going to be to our advantage. And I think you made another good point too, is about, you know, we're not trying to compete toe to toe, or I should say, like, you know, level to level with DeGette on fundraising. I don't actually want to, right? I don't want to be a $2 million campaign. And I think what we're trying to do, which is bigger than just my candidacy and which is bigger than just me winning at the end of this, right? We're trying to build something that other individuals who are in this type of fight, and what I mean by this type of fight, I mean like a grassroots, justice-driven, progressive platform. We want to prove that people like me, people like real humans who don't, you know, take from the establishment, can actually do this, right? And I think as we move throughout the course of this campaign, we're going to highlight, like in a very detailed fashion, how we've managed to overcome some of those really challenging obstacles that, you know, I think stump a lot of candidates, and, you know, give people belief in the fact that there is a path for every individual who wants to run a grassroots race to win. And I think if we educated people more and shared kind of how to get there, I think we would see more people take this route, because, you know, we recognize that how you win matters just as much as winning itself. And we see a lot of Democrats and a lot of candidates across this country take shortcuts to win, right? They accept a lot of money from corporations. They accept a lot of money from special interest groups, and that's all in the name of winning. But by the time they get to the finish line, they've diluted their value platform so much with that money that when they get to Congress, you're not making decisions that actually benefit anyone. And I think what's really frustrating is that if you asked, you know, Democrats, especially my opponent, right, I think they would recognize that healthcare is broken right now. I think they'd recognize that the environment is top of the priority list. They would agree on a lot of these things, but when it comes to acting, it's not there, right? And I think we know why that's the case, and it's because they can't, or else.
Yeah, and you know what? Don't underestimate your likability, because it's important, I think, when you're running a campaign, to realize that your campaign is its own entity and is part of progress regardless of what happens. Like, you're building a snowball that's rolling, and what you choose to do with it, win or lose at the end, is, I think, equally as important. Most people just let them dissipate, and that's that. But what my point is that it isn't just that. You also need to be a good candidate. And unfortunately, we see a lot of people, it's like they want to help, they want to make a change. That doesn't mean they're a good candidate. It doesn't mean that you're the right candidate for that district.
Right.
Because it is, unfortunately, demographics matter. And you have to be reachable and likable. That's it. People have to like you. They have to like you, and they have to want to be on your team. That's it. And really, I think there's a lot of candidates that they're on all the right policies, but they don't really like endear themselves in a way. Not everybody is meant to be this. Not everybody is meant to do everything.
Build as many relationships as you can with the leaders and organizers in the arts district. Very important. Absolutely. There are tons of breweries, tons of nightlife. Anytime the Broncos have a football game,
it all comes down to sports for you.
Of course it does. So always make sure that, you know, you're chumming it up, wearing the orange, and what kind of?
Oh no, I could tell he's a Broncos fan. You know what? As somebody who lived there for 4 years painfully as a Dolphins fan, and quite honestly, being a Dolphins fan is painful no matter where you live.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
It's a brutal existence. But being there when the Broncos lost that year when I was there. I was there from 88 to 92.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
There was something ugly that went down. And I remember, this is how you know you're in Colorado. When you wake up and it's the day after the president invaded another country, invaded Iraq. This was the first time, right? And you wake up and on the front page of the Denver Post is Bronco fans tattoos. This happened. Oh yes. Broncos fans tattoos was the headline, and we had just invaded another country. So people have to understand the depth and that they will sit out there in snow with blankets.
Oh yeah, no,
Oh,
there's a lot of love for the Broncos, and like if you're in Denver on a day that the Broncos are playing and you find yourself on the road, I'm like, good luck. You're
Yeah.
not gonna be moving. Like you're trapped. I'm sorry. It's,
yeah. Well, that's
that
really
kind of city. Yeah.
You guys just make Colorado so likable. So you really do need to prepare for an influx of population, especially as we're going to have to be evacuating from the lower lying states because everyone's seeking higher ground.
Yeah.
But Colorado's likable. It's just everybody there's weed there. Like everybody wants
That's
to
not
go
the only
there.
reason why Colorado's likable, but you're right. Like it is.
No.
Yeah.
No, it isn't. But
I can tell you one of the reasons Colorado's not likable is you have a very big fracking problem, and that's something that needs to be dealt with. And of course, as a congressional representative, having the weight of the federal seat goes a long way. And I have a feeling that Representative DeGette does not prioritize the fact that so much land has been decimated by hydraulic fracturing. And that is something that absolutely has to end. I just want to confirm it's Neal Walia for Congress.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Let's get that up there.
Everybody send some love.
Yeah.
Send some love. I always encourage people, break it up. Let's say you allocate $100 to the cause, split it up. Change it up monthly, donate to different candidates, spread the love because it affects all of us everywhere.
In 2022, we are definitely going to be doing a lot more candidate panels.
Yes.
And one of the panels that we're definitely going to look to do is an MMT/FJG type of panel. And we certainly would welcome to have you on.
Is there anyone else in Colorado, like in other districts that you know of that should be on our radar?
Lori Bobart? I'm just saying. I just had to put that up there, just for fun.
Yeah.
Just for fun.
No, because what I'd like to do at some point, like we have a handful of people that we have in California and in Washington that all different districts, but like I love the idea of having state panels. But it's very possible that Neal is our only Coloradan unless we know of some more. Who else is there anybody else out there that's a progressive that's challenging an incumbent like that?
Let me ask you a question. Are you asking about federal or are you asking about state and local?
No, right now we're just talking about congressional seats just to kind of keep apples and apples.
But
is there
really
anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I think when you think about the landscape of Colorado representatives, there are certainly a lot that, and I mean Democrats in specific, right?
Yeah.
Some do accept dollars from groups that I don't necessarily support, but are doing really great work in spite of that, right?
No, we only platform non-corporate candidates. We only platform.
That's our number one rule. We have one rule.
I'll platform a Republican if they're non-corporate. I haven't met one.
It's the same thing that we say about Andrew Yang and his push for the Forward Party. I think it's actually a very noble idea, and it's a potentially very successful idea, but he has to commit to no corporate special
interests. And I don't
interests.
think he is. And I don't think
if he doesn't, then it won't succeed.
Right.
If he does, he might be onto something.
We're interviewing him this week, so we'll see.
That's excellent. And I think I saw his interview with the Young Turks, and I was happy to see them press him on that very important question, which is what makes you different in any way, shape, or form if you are accepting money from the same groups? It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, right? Like we all suffer from this same problem, which is, private sector money. And so if you are not outright refusing that, I agree. What's the point?
And one of the
all right. Well, then Neal, we might have to throw you in with the Washington people, and you're just going to have to suffer with them on a panel. I don't know. We'll have to do. Maybe we'll just do it by time zones.
No, I said we should do one that's MMT.
That's fine. Okay, fine. But a lot of progressives are MMT, though.
Not necessarily, and a lot of them don't really understand.
I don't see how you could support our policies and not be MMT. How could you support all our policies?
Well, a lot of people still don't understand that money can just be printed. You have to control inflation. This idea that there's this deficit and debt and all this stuff. It's like, no, actually, that's not how it works.
You're being gaslit, people.
Well,
every time. Yeah.
That's how you keep people in line. I hate to say it. That's
yeah, you could ask Fadil.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, but I know it's true. MMT, like it's one of those things that I look at MMT as basically the explanation as to how we've been being lied to forever, as to why we can't have the things we want. And yeah, I know there's the inflation thing, and I understand, but that's why you hire experts that understand it to do it. I don't need to understand the details of it. I know that it's true because I know I've been being lied to. It's that simple.
I think fundamentally for me, the thing that is valuable about MMT, it provides the economic foundation for strong progressive policies, right? I think one of the things I would self-criticize, like my camp, you know, and all the candidates that I really love, is that I think we've lacked like a very tactical fiscal explanation for explaining why healthcare and investing into healthcare as a human right is an economic benefit for our country, and why investing into things like the Green New Deal would benefit our economy, you know, exponentially. And I think MMT provides a framework that will arm progressives in our community to, you know, confront those really challenging questions in a way that makes sense, you know, for a lot of Americans, and gives us the ability to see that everything that we have chosen to not finance is just that. It's a choice, right? We have always had the ability to pay for healthcare. We've always had the ability to finance a green economy. And as long as people continue to understand that it's a choice, and if we can get more people to recognize that, that's how we overcome those challenges. And so
I think we just take the money from the defense budget and put it into healthcare.
It would,
and that then you don't have to do anything.
And
just switch it right over.
Yeah, and I think we always get into that trap, right? Of oh, how are you going to pay for it, right? And everyone gets us on the, well, are you going to raise taxes to do this? Or are you going to do that? And it's like, well, we don't have to actually raise taxes to finance a lot of these things. Then don't get me wrong, we should raise taxes.
Oh yes, on the rich
billionaires, right? But it's not because we have to pay for things. It's because in principle, that is the right thing to do. That is what it means to be an equitable and just society. And we need to stop attaching both of those things as a necessity for one or the other to happen. And so I would love to participate on any of those.
Oh yeah, we will definitely have you back. And you also have this really cute Daughtry thing going on. I don't know if anyone ever told you that. Do you know who Daughtry is? Do you know who Daughtry? You don't know who Daughtry is?
Oh, he's a Christian singer, so.
No, he's not.
He kind of.
He's a rock singer.
He's a rock singer. But
He's not.
That's not the genre I've been raised on. I'm sorry. So.
No. Okay. No. I'm sorry. But anyway, you have a Daughtry thing going on. I mean, it is a compliment. It's a compliment.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Neal Walia for Congress.com.
Guys, check it out.
Give him a helping hand. He can use it. And obviously, Neal, it was a pleasure having you on, and we will definitely be in touch.
I appreciate you giving me the platform. Thank you for the work y'all do. Have a good day.
You're welcome, brother. Have a great day.
See you.
Bye-bye. Didn't even get a chance to talk about the fact that he's
adorable
Denver fan, and I'm a Giants fan.
Oh, for God. This is why
the Giants had to take such a really big loss on the chin to start the season.
I thought he was lovely. I thought he was lovely.
And so he obviously brought up a lot of good points. And again, I think recognizing the district and recognizing where the changes need to be made. Look,
he's definitely in a good situation as far as his contacts and his connections. Like he's
got
definitely
an appeal. He's got an appeal factor.
Well, he has an appeal factor, but he is also connected in the right places. If he's worked in all those government places, he knows he's put in the work in DC.
That's the same thing as Mr. Herezi and Miss Oakley in New Jersey and Connecticut, respectively. Two people that have actually worked on Capitol Hill and at the state level and know the ins and outs of what this is all about. As you said, just because you want the job doesn't mean that that is the right move.
I know, and people hate hearing that because there is this notion that we have, and we promote this notion that regular people should be doing these things.
Yes.
I absolutely believe that, but not all regular people are suited to all occupations. It's not an elitist thing. It's just certain people are not, like, if I'm scared of heights, I'm not going to be an iron worker.
It's like people who tell me that I would be suited to be an attorney, and I never
you would
felt
absolutely
it.
have to get an assistant if you were going to do that.
Well, sure.
You're so.
No, I'm not saying that I want to be an attorney. I'm just simply saying, I don't even know why you're saying that. I'm simply saying that it never dawned on me because I never felt it. It's not something that I feel. The same is true for being an estate planner, which is what my father does. I have no interest in that.
I'd rather watch paint dry.
And again, all some people care about is money. That's not what gets me up in the morning. Unfortunately, that's what gets up a lot of people. and a lot of people that live in the Denver metro area.
What
Luckily,
gets me
there-
up is a very loud blender.
So luckily, there are a lot of good candidates, solid candidates that are out there, and Neal is certainly one of them. So we hope you'll check him out. And we have one last thing that we have to.
We do have today Florida Bites and is full of reptiles segment. And I don't know if you read the little post-its I put on there. Like, I think it's funny.
This is a subject that I really don't want to talk about.
I'll talk about it. It's ludicrous.
But
It's just ludicrous.
it's
And of course, it's Florida. And yes, I did pick the New York Post article, even though it's been in all over the place.
But it's right here in our own backyard.
Oh, it's in our district.
In
So Aventura. So Florida Bites and is full of reptiles. Florida veterinarian was sentenced to nearly 22 years in federal prison for recording videos of himself sexually abusing dogs and for collecting child pornography. Now, what I find interesting about this is those are very divergent things, both disgusting, both definitely should be incarcerated for, but very different. Prentice Madden he's 40 years old, was hit with a total of 272 months behind bars after pleading guilty in July to child porn and animal cruelty charges.
I could vomit.
Prosecutors said the vet made videos of himself engaged in sexual activities with dogs and shared them with other people in online chats. Investigators discovered the disturbing videos as well as chats about bestiality on his cell phones. He also accessed kiddie porn via file sharing, storing thousands of files in his own account, and received child porn images and videos through online and social media where he frequently discussed sexually abusing children. So I've never personally seen the crossover between child porn and bestiality. So this is actually a first for me.
The two things that I literally could hurl from.
I know, it's just so disgusting. And so this is clearly a predator that needs to be removed from the streets. This is somebody that I don't think 22 years is enough, although I would venture to say he's not going to make it that
He ain't
far.
going to make it long.
No.
And if you see the picture of this gentleman, he looks like an outstanding member in his community.
Yeah, well, he
a person
probably
that
is
respected and around children and
clearly animals. Is a veterinarian.
Yeah.
This is
The only thing I'm going to say is that the irony of the photograph that they put of this very Sophie-looking dog.
It is kind of looking a little bit like Sophie.
But look at the dog literally has a help me.
Okay,
Look.
so today's segment, Florida Bites and is full of reptiles and total pieces of shit, but no longer snails. So this is the good news. And I want people to look, if you're seeing it visually, look at the size of the snail.
Because snails are usually very small.
Yes,
this is a ginormous
these are
snail.
giant African land snails. They are not indigenous to here. We've had this problem before. They are extremely destructive.
They're just like termites.
Yeah, they're very destructive. So this isn't something where we're trying to eradicate the critter from its home. It's not supposed to be here.
No.
Granted, we mess up that all the time. So after years,
we're on borrowed land.
well, we've had it before. So Wednesday, the state announced that we have won the battle with the invasive pest. After years of fighting to rid of the destructive land snail, Florida Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried, this could be you, announced their eradication at a news conference where the first giant African land snail was found. So of course it was first found in Miami because that makes sense.
Of course.
The snails, which were found in Miami in 2011, are one of the most damaging snails in the world because they consume at least 500 types of plants and can cause structural damage to plaster and stucco. They also can carry a parasitic nematode that can lead to meningitis in humans and animals. So these are normally I'd be willing to forfeit people for critters. This is one of the critters that we need to get rid of. Originally from East Africa, the snail is one of the largest land snails in the world, growing up to 8 inches in length. Each snail can live as long as 9 years. They're difficult to eradicate because they have no natural predator, and they reproduce exponentially, up to 1,200 more snails a year.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're getting rid
critters.
of snails. However, if you can see, we'd rather have snails than shit. So if I had to choose between land snails and bestiality vet, I'm picking the land snails.
That veterinarian is, again,
this is
as bad as it gets, because again,
so gross.
This is a person who is considered to be a pillar of the community.
This is a person who's supposed to be a savior of animals. This is a person who's, well, it's really no different than my pediatrician, my kid's pediatrician. Oh yeah, we are. I know it. We're here though. But my child's pediatrician, who used to be a pediatrician, he was recently arrested, charged, and is currently pending trial for molestation. So this is the same thing. So you have to understand, predators will go where they have the most to predate.
Maybe that
on.
explains a lot of why we have so many people with any type of financial means wanting to live in gated communities, because they want to protect themselves. And
Oh
their
yes.
kids from-
Well, no, and I also have this theory that white people are just so incredibly afraid of people that are Black or other people of color that they cannot hide far and fast enough.
BL, one thing we want to mention, you did ask, Sundays in the afternoon, possibly in the evening, again, it just depends, but we are looking to move our show, and we are moving our show to Sundays and Wednesdays. Part of the reason we're doing that is because not so much Monday, but especially Thursday.
We can't compete on Thursdays.
There's just way too many shows that go on, and Thursday evening, whether it's the Young Turks, Katie Halper, I know Jimmy Dore does a lot of shows then. There's just,
I don't know. We were up against Nina Turner talking on Rashad Ritchie a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Thursday, and one of our supporters, I don't think it was you, Bill, but there was one other supporter, Mario, Bronx. I can't remember who it was, but one of you had mentioned that when we were live streaming recently on a Thursday, they said that we were one of 5
that they were
shows
watching simultaneously. We can't do that.
compete with that.
So therefore, we will be relegated to Sunday brunch status. Don't mind the barking dogs.
We'll come up with some creative ideas in terms of how to do this, and as we suggest,
I'll try not to chew loudly.
Yes. Well, we may also be having a studio change, so we will keep you posted on that. Might be a whole new opportunity.
Yes.
for us.
What's coming up on? We do have something scheduled. So coming up this
so
week.
on Wednesday, we are going to have a mini panel. Hang on one second.
All right.
So as I was saying, this is so what is ultimately coming up on Wednesday. We are going to be doing a mini panel. Friend of the show, Isaiah James and Shani Chidari, 2 former slate mates of Jen's, but also 2 former members of the United States military, one in the Army, one in the Marines. One of the reasons that we are having this panel is because Isaiah was recently on an amazing show that just started called The Problem with Jon Stewart. And he talked about what it was like serving in the military. He talked about what it was like taking another life. Now, not a lot of people want to talk about that, but he was willing to address it. And Jon Stewart, who's one of the greatest you'll ever see in terms of somebody who is high up in the entertainment industry and gives back relentlessly.
There hasn't been decent late night TV since Jon Stewart left.
But he's coming back. He's coming back, and we're going to do everything we can to highlight that. And he highlighted on his very first, well, one thing at a time. But on the first show that he did was about just how devastatingly bad our military industrial complex is. And Isaiah James, who is running for the United States Congress, Shanid, who is running for the New York State Assembly. We may have one more guest, we may not, but it is going to be a very important conversation. And then next Sunday, we're already starting to pack them up. Next Sunday, we will have Kim Iverson.
Kim Iverson's going to come on and chat, which is not, I mean, we've chatted before, but that'll be fun. Yes. God, that's early in the morning for her.
Yeah, she even said,
because she's West Coast time.
Yeah, she is. So she's going to come on at 1 p.m., but that means that we will probably have a candidate guest prior to in our stories and whatnot. So yeah.
What else do we have coming up? Do we have anything else on the calendar? On
Thursday, the last Thursday that our show will be doing.
Because I thought we had a show on Thursday. Who is it?
October 21st. We are first going to have,
not
as
the
a
14th.
Reschedule. No, on the Thursday, the 21st.
Okay.
We will have Erica Rhodes, who is running for the United States Congress in California's 30th
Right.
district.
She was supposed to come on and something came up, so she's coming back.
But
This
as
is a rain
somebody
check.
who is a part of the Humanity Forward organization that Andrew Yang started, it makes perfect sense to have her on that night because the person who is coming on right afterwards is none other than Andrew Yang. He will be here to discuss his book, Forward, as well as the Forward Party. And we're going to have some interesting and some tough questions for him about his new venture.
Which I hate doing because I like Andrew.
But we actually think that it's a venture that could succeed if he's willing to commit to one vital, important.
And I don't think he can. We'll see.
We hope you enjoyed it. This is a new start. We love seeing you guys here. But I really appreciate that you guys, did
you ask
Mario,
about Liberia?
Bronx,
What's the deal with Liberia?
I think he's long gone. There's a gentleman named Arif Hassan who comes on and always says
every
Liberia.
single episode, and he just puts the word Liberia.
I don't know if you're talking about Liberia, Florida.
Well,
Liberia.
that's the thing. We live in a district that has a part of our town that is known as Liberia, and so when somebody comes on and just writes the word Liberia, but even if they're talking about this Liberia or African Liberia, why are you saying that, and what does that mean? Tell us what you mean. Seriously. I'd like to know. Seriously, I'm curious. Like, you're saying Liberia. What is that? I know where Liberia is.
We really do appreciate you guys as always. Like I said, we will be doing Sundays and Wednesdays going forward. One exception is going to be
the 21st.
The 21st. Other than that,
well, and we do have a Veterans Day.
Yeah.
We will be doing a Veterans Day on a Thursday. Which is the 11th.
But that's because it is Veterans Day.
And because we will be hosting Oliver Stone.
And possibly hoping, knock on wood, Jesse.
You should not put that
into
there.
the ether.
Oh my God.
Hopefully they can hear it. Or that
but we have Oliver Stone and Danny Scherzen are going to come on for Veterans Day, two amazing veterans. You know what? We really do focus a lot on veterans and labor because that's really where it's at.
Well, one person does.
We're getting some sort of impersonation. I can't imagine. Who are we doing? Who's coming to visit? Oh no.
I just want to say that I really do appreciate this new format. It's working out really well. And I think on a Sunday, what better day? Sunday, fun day,
So
That's always been my
letchy.
favorite day of the week. So I certainly appreciate you all coming. And remember, this is a very important show. Patreon.com/generational change. If you haven't become a Patreon or patron, whatever the hell you call it, become one so you can hear me. I've escaped. I'm not, trust me, I'm not trapped right now.
Oh, good God.
No. I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm
you
not
are.
going anywhere. So, of course, Jen really must appreciate. Listen, I'm Teflon built.
I think they all need to go to jail.
Yeah, well,
I think everybody in the past 3 presidential administrations needs to be incarcerated.
Hey, look,
so,
as far as I'm concerned, Hillary's been trying to throw me under the bus forever. Maybe it's time I do the same.
Yeah, maybe it's. Would you find the money that you stole from Haiti in the Clinton Foundation?
I don't know what you're talking about.
The Clinton Foundation is a money laundering scheme, is what I think.
I'm going to say this one time and only one time. I did not take money from Haiti directly.
Depends on what your definition of take is.
I didn't lie because I cannot tell a lie. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
So, with that said.
Yeah, you and your wife should both be in prison.
You ought to start. That's too much foreplay for me, Jen. You're such a naughty girl.
I know you like handcuffs, Bill. You should appreciate that.
I certainly do. And I like massages too, if you catch my drift. So really appreciate you all checking in today. And I hope you enjoy my little quips about the show. We'll see you soon.
Oh, good God. He's so lechy.
I'm wondering if I should be him for Halloween.
Gross.
Yeah, that would be
if
fun.
you don't want anybody to come near you. He was Trump 2 years ago.
That's right. And maybe I could be.
And he painted his face orange. It was hilarious. It was sort of like Trump meets Oompa Loompa.
Tremendous, incredible. And not only was I Trump, but I went to
Liberia. So he was orange. He went orange face in the Black community.
Which
it
is
was
even
pretty,
more amazing.
It was hilarious.
But I was getting a lot of cheers and jeers from a
but
lot
it's
of
just
people.
funny. I don't think that orange face is an offensive thing because there aren't really orange people other than Trump and Oompa Loompas.
Totally don't make fun of my orange face. So
but
generally
generally speaking, don't do orange face.
So one more time, patreon.com.
Guys, and if you're not
supporter,
subscribed, just hit the subscribe button. It's
yes,
free.
and make sure to check if you're subscribed, because they are
Unsubscribing
unsubscribing people
people.
all the time.
I actually found myself unsubscribed to something that I know I was subscribed to, and it's not even a controversial thing. It was one of my reaction channels, like one of my music reaction
There you
channels.
go.
So people are getting mass unsubscribe. Get the Lulu sticker, be a patron, support our mission. What's our mission?
Our mission is to transform politics into service, and we're doing that every day with your help. Keep spreading the word. We know we're suppressed. We're working on having some assistance that will be coming on to help us get the word out more effectively. And of course, more events at the local level. Jen, one more time.
Okay, so when
giveaway
you do
bags.
donate to us, when you do donate anything that comes in on Generational Change or comes in through
Thank you,
Patreon,
BL.
everything goes to Gen Core, which is a 501c4. It's a nonprofit organization. We do service. One of the things that we do, these are, it's hard to see. They're little hygiene kits. They're little individually packaged hygiene kits. Turns out a friend of mine from growing up has a company that does these. So we buy from them. And it's called Backpacks USA, plug to them. And we put care packages together for the homeless. This is just the money that comes into us goes to several things: service, supporting nonprofit or non-corporate candidates, and
Like
the occasional,
like India Walton running for mayor of Buffalo, New York.
yes, we just donated to India Walton, and the occasional trip for us to go and help people that are campaigning, that are non-corporatists campaigning. So all the money that comes in, we don't have salaries. We're just trying to help. So whatever you guys send is much appreciated.
We hope you enjoyed our first official Sunday show. Hopefully it'll grow more so as we go forward, as a number of our supporters.
You
have
guys
already
just have to
alluded
make sure to get up on a Sunday.
Well, not even that early. What are you talking? Well, unless they're on the West Coast.
Well,
yes.
Not only that, but and then there's the people that are football people like you. And what if they have a 1 o'clock game? I mean, I'm just saying, like, this is something that
BL, we go to different parts of South Florida where there's homeless encampments everywhere.
Oh, where do they
Everywhere.
take it? Well,
Yeah.
these are all like, that's why I get these, because they're like, you can only use them a few times. They're all kind of like disposable little things. Little toothpaste, a pack of shaving cream, a comb. Like, these are not things. That's why I get these small packs, and I actually put them in bags with a bunch of different protein things, like protein drinks, protein bars, just trying to give, and I just hand them out. So I it's not like giving somebody a full thing of shaving cream. That's why I do these packs. But yeah, that's sort of what we're doing.
The bigger we get, the more we'll be able to help, and the more we can make an impact here in South Florida and beyond. So
look, I'd love to build them tiny homes.
yeah,
I want to build myself a
that's it.
tiny
You
home.
know what? If we ever really took off, that would be an amazing venture.
Well, there are
Oh.
places, there are municipalities that have done that, where you invest in tiny homes for homeless people. I think it's great. That's what I would, do. But
So-
I would take the money that they're going to use to build a tunnel underground to help rich people get from downtown to the beach and put that into maybe housing people.
That's a great idea. And on that note, we'll see you Wednesday.